This is Excel 2016, Module 5, Part 2. We're going to begin working with Excel tables. We're going to create one and then manipulate the data within it. So we're going to get back into our workbook called June, and you should be on the sales data worksheet. Now what I'd like you to do is select any cell within this sales data that's visible on this worksheet and make it the active cell. That just means you clicked on it. So if I click on C10, as I have right now, C10 is called the active cell. As long as a cell within the body of data is active, when you insert the table, Excel will try to find all of the data that is continuous around it and turn that into the table. So let's go ahead and click on our Insert tab and insert a table. And you can see that what it did was it tried to say, okay, I've got data in this area, there's no spaces, and that's the range it selected for me. I can scroll down and make sure that that's correct. If I knew for sure it was correct, I wouldn't even have to do that. It does also ask us if the table that we are using has headers. And since we have column headers, the checkbox should be checked for this. So we're going to click OK, and you notice that it does turn it into a table. One of the benefits of tables is that I can format this area as a group instead of having to individually format the cells. And as you can see, it did some of that formatting for me automatically. Now, one of the things that we can do with tables is we can give them a name. Once we've created the table, you'll notice we get a new ribbon. This is another contextual tab. It's called Table Tools Design. And on that ribbon, we can name the table. So I'm going to click in the table name box, and I'm going to change the name to be June TBL for table. Now there are rules to what you can use in these names. You could spend the time memorizing those if you choose to, or you could just pay attention to the error messages. If you got one, then you would have to figure out what you did wrong. So for example, if I changed June space TBL, when I hit enter, I would get an error message telling me that your name cannot include a space. One thing that does sometimes cause students problems is that it cannot match an existing cell number. So if I did CAT5 for category 5, that would not be an acceptable name because CAT5 can in fact be a sales number, or excuse me, cell number. So I'm going to go ahead and rename it, get rid of that space, and call it June TBL. When I press the enter key, that does save that name for us. Okay, now I'm going to look at some of the formatting options that we have. So the first option we have are to work with table styles. So if we hit the drop down arrow where it says more, you'll see that we have a lot of options. We have light options, medium, and you can see it's different coloring. And the dark options have even more colored text in. So you can pick a style you like. We are going to choose medium 7. And so that allows us to pick the colors and the shading. Now let's look over here at some of these other options. Notice header row is checked. So that allows me to highlight that header row. Be careful because we have with this style white text. If you uncheck that, it makes the header row white with white text, and it looks as though that data is gone, but it's not. The other thing we have are banded rows. So banded rows is what makes it color every other row. If we did banded columns, it would color every other column. We also have the ability to highlight the first column, similar to what we did with our top row. We can change our column width. So if I wanted to change A through E, I can either use any of the methods we talked about in the earlier chapters. So I could drag and drop all of them to 15. I could go over to the Home tab and use formatting options there and select the column width. I could check this amount column, and if I wanted to change the number formatting, I would do that on the Home tab, because you're going to do it the same way we did with all other numbers. So I can apply the accounting format to that option. So formatting in your table is pretty simple. Some of the items, as we discussed, can be handled over here on the design. And then some of the items can be handled on the Home tab as well. Now let's look at adding data. So we're going to add data at the end of our table. And it's going to be for June 30. Now, as long as you do not leave a blank space in between the last row and what you start typing, it assumes that you are trying to add to the table. So if you had a table and for the report you needed to maybe add a footnote, something that you did not want incorporated into the table, you would need to at least leave one blank row, come down a row or two, and type your footnote there. Then it would recognize, since you left the blank rows, that it should not be incorporated within the table. In our case, we do want it within the table, so we are going to make sure we are on the very next row. I do not have to worry about the formatting. Excel will take care of banding the rows and doing the number formatting and things to match the rows above. So we're going to start out entering the date of 6/30/2017. I'm going to tab between the fields to make the data entry easier. Now I'm able to use the autofilling options to help me with typing. So if I type an F, Excel says last time you had an F in this column, you typed Friday. So it fills that in for me, and if it's correct, I simply hit the tab key. The day is 1. Sales ID. Business is individual. Once I start typing the I, it then fills it in for me. The dollar amount is $309. When I hit the tab key to finish that one, you notice it brings me down. It highlights the row green because that's the next color, and it's ready for me to start typing that next piece of information. So this one is going to be on 6/30 also. Notice we have to type in the date and the year 2017. If you leave the year blank, Excel will populate it with the current year, so it would change the date to 6/30/2016 since we are currently in 2016 when I'm creating this video. So if you're not in the current year that you're typing, you do have to type the year. So again, this is Friday. So I type the F. 1. Now this time I want it to be restaurant. But notice when I type the R, it doesn't fill it in because above you can see I have both residential care and restaurant. So I have to continue typing till it can figure out which one I mean. And RES is how both of them start. It's not until I get to the T that I can differentiate, or Excel can differentiate. So now restaurant is what I wanted. I can go ahead and tab. The dollar amount is $464.12. With dollar amounts, if the amount of pennies is 0, you do not need to type the decimal place or the pennies. It will fill that in for you. However, if there are pennies after, then you do have to type those numbers in. The trailing zeros, so on 192.80 that you see up in row 97, I would type 192.8 and it would automatically fill in the 0. On row 103, I simply typed 309 and it filled in both the decimal places and the zeros. So on the next row, 105, we are going to type again 6/30/2017. It's still going to be on Friday, and we want a 1 for the sales ID. This time it is in the group home. Notice when I type my G, it fills that in, so I can just hit tab. And it's 431.12. And the last record we're going to add is on 6/30/2017. Excuse me. There we go. It is still a Friday and a 1. And this time it's residential care. So again, when I type RES, it still isn't sure. It's not till I get to that 4th letter that it can fill in the balance for me. Now I'm going to type in a dollar amount of $225.02 and hit enter to indicate that I am done. So you can see how easy it is to add data. If the data you were adding was not at the bottom, you really do not have to insert rows up in the middle and edit that data that way, because you can easily sort your table and have the records end up exactly where you want them. So now let's look at how we can edit data. So I want to use the find and select to edit data. So I'm going to go all the way back up to the very top. I'm going to hit the home key and then hit up. And the home key and up. We're going to go all the way up to the top. I think it's Control Home. Some of those function keys may not work exactly the same way on a Mac. But we're going to go all the way up here, and we want A1 to be the active cell. Now I'm going to go over and I'm going to choose from the Find and Select drop-down arrow the option that says Find. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you're using a find, if something is stored in 2 fields, you cannot search for both at the same time. So for example, if I wanted to search for, they said find the record that happened on 6/20 for residential care, I can't put in here 6/20/2017 residential care because it's not going to find that. That is not in one cell. The information you type in here has to be a value in one cell. So you would have to decide, are you going to narrow the results down better by using residential care or by using the date? And since by using the date, it breaks it down to about 4 records, that's all we would want in that Find button. So we're going to click Find Next. And now it brings us down to the first record that it finds. And then we can come over and locate that record that says residential care. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. Notice that this record has a dollar amount of 0. And what I really want in that dollar amount is 309. So you're going to want to click in that cell, which is E70, and type in 309. Now, if you notice, one of the things that happens with an Excel table is as I scroll down the table and my column headings would become off the screen, instead of doing freeze panes, I'm able to have those headings roll up and replace the column letter numbers. So Excel does that for us. so that now as I scroll down, those headings stay visible and they stay as part of that column. They replace the column letters up there so that you can always see what you're looking at. Now let's take a look at deleting a record. Okay, so if I need to delete a record, I could either scroll or I could locate tables that are records that are duplicated, having the table tool use that for me. One thing to be aware of with contextual tabs, if I click out here, I am not clicked on the table. The contextual tab goes away. If I click on the table, then that tab appears. So if I scroll up, you'll notice that in row 56 and 57 are identical. So that would make me concerned, gee, what if I have other duplicated records and I didn't know about it? So I'm going to have Excel search for duplicated records and remove them. There's a tool on our Table Tools Design tab called Remove Duplicates. The key thing you want to be careful with is you have to specify which fields have to be duplicated in order for it to remove the record. We're going to leave all fields checked. And so if that's the case, only those records with all 5 fields identical will have one of them removed. But look at your data. If you said, if the check, remove them if the sales date and the day are duplicated, but you unchecked these boxes, it would remove everything from 6/1 except the very first record. Because it would say, oh, these 3 have the same date and day as that one, so they must be duplicates. So you really have to pay attention to which boxes are checked here and be very careful if you uncheck boxes that you know you're not going to remove data you did not intend on. So I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. And notice it did find that one duplicate value that we had identified, and it removed it. The next video that we work with, we will begin to look at the ways to sort, and then we will begin looking at how to filter the data within the table.